During my 5th shift ever at In-N-Out Burger, I was taking care of this one customer who just seemed to be off. I'll call him Ray for this story. Ray was randomly slurring his words and almost passing out talking to me. So I tell my manager, and my manager keeps an eye on him. About 10 minutes later, as I'm helping another customer, I hear, "You gonna give me my food, white boy?" And Ray just smashed his drink into the ground and starts yelling racist stuff to my manager. My manager then comes to my drawer, gets what Ray had paid out of the drawer, and gives him a full refund and tells him to leave. Ray did not like that and started getting louder and louder, with the dining room full of people. My manager repeatedly asks Ray to leave, and eventually calls the cops on Ray, and informs him that the cops are on their way. But Ray does not care about anything in this world more at the moment than getting his food. Eventually, Ray starts making threats and eventually says something about my manager's wife. I don't recall what it was, but in the moment, it was enough to have everybody in the dining room have an even stronger dislike for Ray than before. My manager, once again asking him to leave, but this time walks around the corner to escort him out. However, Ray leaving peacefully was probably not an option. Just as my manager walked from behind the counter, Ray steps forward and just punched my manager in the head. Just after watching my manager get punched in the head, I see Ray go for another swing. As Ray went for another swing, a customer comes up from behind, puts Ray into a chokehold, and drags him outside and holds him down till the cops get there and arrest him. The cops were able to contain Ray, and eventually put him into the cop car. With it being my 5th shift ever at In-N-Out Burger, it was definitely one of the most eventful shifts that I've ever had, and something that I will never forget for the rest of my life. I used to work at In-N-Out Burger. The job was a really great job, and I liked it. I made a lot of great friends, and I even met my boyfriend there. I never really had anything weird happen to me, except for this one night when I was working that late night shift. I was working the cash register when I noticed that some lady was hitting her 5 to 7-year-old daughter outside. Customers started complaining to the managers, and some of the moms on the shift got very defensive of what was going on. Eventually, one of the managers was notified of this, and the manager went up to the woman to confront her about it. She asked that she needed to leave or the cops were going to be called. The lady then started threatening us and screaming at the top of her lungs. The lady wouldn't stop yelling. She was acting crazy at this point. We couldn't contain her. We tried everything to get her to calm down, but nothing was working at that point. Eventually, one of the coworkers got on the phone with the police, and the police said that they would be there in about 5 to 10 minutes. As this was going on, the girl started to come inside and started yelling at all the customers. My manager, being notified that the cops were called, told the woman that the cops were being called. She then began to say, "Why would you call the police, and how dare you call the police?" She was acting like an absolute crazy person at that point. Eventually, she grabbed her daughter and started to leave. As soon as she started to leave, though, the cops did pull up with their sirens blaring. She then was able to grab her daughter and tried running off to not be caught by the police. The police were too fast for her, though, and eventually caught up to her, contained her, put her in handcuffs, and put her in the cop car. One of the policemen was able to grab the girl and pull her to safety. He was then seen looking at the girl, monitoring some of the bruises that she had on her body. You then see the cop give her a big hug and held the girl's hand and took her back to the police car and put her in there to safety. I'm just so happy that that little girl got help. I'm not sure what was wrong with that lady, but she did need some serious help, and I really hope for her sake that she got it. My name is Stephanie, and I used to work at In-N-Out Burger. I was working the drive-thru once, and a guy in his late 30s pulled up. He looked normal, kept a smile on his face. I repeated back his order. Everything went smooth. I told him to have a nice day. As soon as he pulls away from the window, the car behind me skips the handout window and speeds off. As I stick my head out the window to see if he was okay, because he did pay for the food, I see 7 cop cars and FBI surround the store and drive-thru. The man that paid for his food but skipped the line, he was eventually surrounded by the 7 cop cars and the FBI agents with their guns drawn. They were screaming at him to get out of his car and get onto the floor. I was looking at the whole thing from the window, and all the other cars in the line were looking at it as well. Eventually, the man gets out of his car, gets onto his knees, and the cops come up and arrest him. Something like this was very rare to see, especially in my area. I live in a gray area and work in a gray area, so for something like this to happen, it's pretty rare. It definitely made for a very crazy and unique shift. I once got a death threat once at In-N-Out Burger. I used to work the handheld section. I was on handheld, and it was pretty slow. A guy came up to me and asked me if I was the one who did something to his food. I apologized and said I wasn't sure what he was talking about. He apparently thought his food had been poisoned and wanted to know if it was me. I really thought that I was being pranked at this point. He didn't particularly look or behave like the usual drug or mental problem people we get from time to time. He just seemed to be like a normal guy in his 40s and 50s approaching me with a question or problem. But then the problem was, you're the one who's poisoning my food. I just kept apologizing and saying I wasn't sure what had happened to his food because I was outside, so I didn't touch any of his food. The whole time he was saying this to me, I tried to keep it cool. I've been smiling the whole time, and a minute into the conversation I realized I should probably stop smiling while this guy is accusing me of poisoning him. The man then started cursing at me, and then started making death threats against my life. Luckily, he then left after he made the death threats. I was hoping that he was going to turn around and say, "Hey, I was totally messing with you. I'm sorry I scared you." But sadly, he didn't. I then went and told my manager about the whole situation. He was very concerned about it. He wasn't joking around at that point. He told me that maybe I should just go home for the night because he didn't know if that guy was going to come back and wanted me to be safe. I told my manager, yeah, maybe that's a good idea. I was thankful that he let me go home. Luckily, I never saw the man after that. Thank God I didn't. I don't want anybody to have to experience anything like that. Hey everyone, thank you so much for checking out the video. If you have a personal scary story that you would like for me to read eventually on here, send it to midnightgoosebumps@yahoo.com. I appreciate you guys liking and subscribing to the video. Thank you for checking out my new channel, and take care.